First of all, did you say free SHS should be reviewed? The NDC people say you said reviewed, Muhammad said reviewed.
Where did I say that?
You didn't say that?
No, we've released 2 videos, one in Twi, one in English. Never said that in it. We've released a statement in which we had outlined what happened at the cabinet retreat and what Ghanaians should look forward to. We never said that. I've granted a number of interviews. I've never said that anywhere. I think sometimes...
Did you say some programs should be reviewed?
No, I've not said anything of that sort.
You didn't say that out of Pedua say you're going to review programs?
No. You would notice that for all some of the people write and tweet and share, they will not be able to find a video and audio that actually has me saying that in it. And that's the game that people play in our media space these days.
But that's serious. You
say
didn't
one
say that
thing,
at all.
I haven't said anything. You say one thing, and then they'll write another headline about it. And a lot of people don't bother to read the story or bother to read the quotation of what you said. So whatever narrative somebody may have skewed on top of it is what they carry. What we have said is quite clear. 1, the borders are going to be opened. 2, we are in an era of fiscal consolidation. That means that we want to raise some more revenue and as much as possible cut expenses so that we can achieve our deficit of 7.4%, which we've targeted for year 2022. Why? Because we have agreed as a country that never again should we go beyond 5% deficit without parliamentary approval.
What does that mean? What is the deficit?
So every year, I mean, it's like your household. You raise money. You have your salary and your incomes, and you have your expenses. But countries often don't have balanced budgets, that what you spend is equal to what you have raised. So often a country will raise some money and then borrow a bit more to add to what it has raised, and that becomes the total of what it spends because of the demands in the country. Now, whatever you borrow usually is judged as a percentage of your total GDP. And the rule of thumb is that that borrowing or that deficit should not be more than 5% of total productivity in the economy.
What's our GDP right now?
I think we're getting close to about 400 billion.
Of cedis?
Yes.
And in dollars?
You would have to divide that by the exchange rates.
Okay. 400 billion. So 5% of that.
Yes. So the rule of thumb is that we should not go beyond 5% of GDP. That's the healthy deficit year on year. When you do that, you don't pile up too much debt higher than the rate at which the economy is growing. And if you are growing on an average 6-7% as the MPP government has been doing, then even when your deficit is growing around 5% year on year, you are still within bounds, you can contain it. But in years when you have difficulty, you go to Parliament and make a case for the suspension of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which is an act that the MPP government brought to play. Remember, the NDC ran this economy with sometimes double-digit deficits, got to a point where they could not contain it, went to the IMF that we're out of ideas, give us some money and some what they call policy credibility before we can find our way around this. This was, I think, between 2014 or so, before we came to power. And as a result, when we came, we said never again should the deficit go beyond 5% without parliamentary approval. Now, in the COVID year, 2020, revenues were not happening. You just play Joe Biden. It's not just America or Ghana. It's every economy in the world.
You know what Egypt are doing? They've capped the price of bread. Because of the wheat situation, their dependence on wheat from Ukraine.
And as a result, various countries are employing various interventions to try and mitigate the impact of the global economic changes on their local economy. So here in Ghana, one of the things that you want to do is to ensure that our budget doesn't get out of hand. And one of the ways to do that is to ensure that fiscal discipline is maintained, not more than 5% by 2 years' time, because we're coming from an expansion of the deficit because of the COVID difficulties a couple of years ago. So this year, 7.4. 7.4 means that you've got to, as much as possible, cut expenses where you can cut, even as you try to raise revenue, so that next year you can come down to 6, the following year you can go down to 5. Cutting means, and this is what I've said, that from the very top to the very bottom, from the office of the president down through ministries, departments, and agencies, the 16 flagship programs of government, we're going to look across and examine whichever one can experience some cuts that will still allow us to deliver as much of that program as possible. We're happy to do it. I don't know where people go.
Will that include free SHS? Could that include free SHS? I have
said, and I remain on that point, that from the office of the president, through every ministry, department, agency, across the 16 programs, the 16 flagship programs, we're going to examine and see where we can make budget cuts. Saying that does not mean that the president plans to cancel free SHS or to, in the words that I think some people like to use, they put that word, they review free SHS. No, and I think we've been very clear that what we are looking at are budget cuts. And I've even gone further to say that should it happen that after the discussions and after the engagements, the executive is taking a pay cut, I think that the legislature should also look at a pay cut and have a conversation among itself that, okay, if this is what is going on and this is how the executive is looking to cut salaries by X% voluntarily so that we can, save some more fiscal space. Maybe we, members of parliament, and I'll be happy to move a motion on that in parliament, maybe we, members of parliament, should also consider taking a pay cut so that we can also help to contribute to what we are seeking to do. That is what then gives you the moral right to ask anybody else in the economy to take a cut on whatever projects or whatever activities that we're going to go on in their areas.
But that means you can't tell us whether free SHS will be part of it or not.
I have said everything is fair to be examined.
Including free SHS?
Including free SHS. But saying that does not mean that free SHS is going to be cancelled. I'm sure you understand that.
Yeah, I get it. But then it raises nerves of people whose children are in school.
And it is fair. It is fair. It is fair for their nerves to be raised. It is fair for their nerves to be raised because we have to raise revenues to do all the things we want. We are living in a country where we want a lot of things legitimately from government, and that's fair. It is our right to demand things from government. But it is also our responsibility to ensure that the various things that we must do to ensure that contribution of resources into the treasury, to be able to feed the various things we are looking for, our roads, our bridges, our flagship programs, salaries of government workers, the activities that are going on in ministries, departments, and agencies are funded. So, I mean, it's okay for people to feel jittery about that.
People are going to feel jittery.
Yes, but of course, then we have an opportunity. That's a major thing,
because they also know that
we have an opportunity to examine our various contributions.
School feeding has been suspended. So it's a sort of...
School feeding has not been suspended. That is, again, another... You see, there's something going on in our media space where people, I think sometimes, just pick half of the statement and throw a story. When the minister goes to parliament and says that the planned expansion of school feeding program has been suspended, you find media houses reporting that school feeding program has been suspended.
Is that what the minister said?
That's what the minister said. You can ask
forgive me, I'm guilty. I didn't read it.
No, because
I'm guilty.
Because people have found out.
And I've shared that information with a lot of friends of mine. People have called me from abroad and said, why are you suspending school?
People have found out that a lot of people won't read the full detail, won't read the quotation, won't listen to the audio, won't watch the video. So what they do is that they write some of these headlines, throw it out.
But these are from respectable sort of portals.
But this is the game in which we are now. So
school feeding has not been suspended?
It has not been suspended.
Are you serious?
What the minister said on the floor of parliament is that the planned expansion.
So this morning students were fed? Yesterday they were fed?
You can check. You have reporters here. You can check. It's not been suspended.
Are you serious?
But this is why we are saying that people should take time and responsibility on themselves to read.
No, we trust what we see.
We are not in an era where you can trust headlines you see. You got to read it.
Even from respectable portals.
You have to read it. You have to sometimes listen to the audio yourself, watch the video yourself, because if you don't take care, they will take things out of context. That's what the caretaker minister for Gender and Social Protection said. So when I heard it at first, I called her. I'm like, Minister, did you say it? He says, no, Kojo. I said the planned expansion. You can get the tape. We'll check the tape. She's talking about the planned expansion. That is what has been suspended. Because of all of these conversations we're having that there are fiscal constraints, so you can't continue doing everything that you had programmed to do. I mean, I know people in private institutions whose salaries were delayed because of COVID constraints and productivity challenges in the organization. And what that meant was that even they had to suspend some of the expenditures that they had planned because their revenues were not coming in. Aggregate it at the national level, it's the same thing. But back to the point.
Okay, no, I'm concerned about the school feeding. It is very serious. I'm so sorry. I have texted people abroad and told them that I'm sure the government has taken the decision because of the COVID.
We all have a responsibility to pay attention to the audio, to the video, to the text. Read it for yourself and understand. Because these days, in fact, today I saw a text or a screenshot that suggests that I have said that all the economic challenges today should be blamed on the former President Mahama. I had never even granted an interview to that effect, but somebody does it, throws it out there.
They put your photograph there?
Yes, because you can easily get a web domain. So then they do it, then they screenshot it and they start sharing it in WhatsApp groups and somebody will see it and say, hey, this is what they said. It's a very interesting time in which we are. We're in a period of disinformation. But I think that people need to take you are personally responsible for the information you consume. You got to read it yourself, watch the video yourself,
I've not recovered
listen to the
audio yourself. Foreign journalists text me and said, Paul, has your government suspended
No, you can call the minister.
And I have said yes.
No, call the minister.
What?
Call the minister or get your team to get the full presentation of the minister in parliament. And you see the question she was asked and the answer she's giving. But back to the point, Paul. I'm saying that fiscal consolidation means among other things, budget cuts from the top to the very bottom. The office of the president itself says, and the president's instructions were clear, says finance minister, do the examination, right from my office, Office of the President, down across ministries, departments, and agencies. There's no secret cow. Ministries, departments, and agencies, 16 flagship programs of government, and examine where you can make budget cuts.
Is it the programs of government or is the salaries of government appointees? Which one is?
Every expenditure line is fair to be examined for possible budget
including
cuts.
Salaries is an expenditure line.
Well, for salaries, which is an expenditure line, you may not maybe go to civil servants, but there are political appointees in there who have political responsibility at this time to contribute something to the resolution that we are looking for. And it is fair for our salaries to be examined. It's fair for the salaries of other political appointees down the value chain, goods and services budget, capex budgets, programs budgets. It's fair to examine all of those things with the objective of ensuring that we achieve the 7.4% deficit at the end of the year. What that means is that as we go along, if let's say revenues are picking up during the year, of course you can make some more releases to the ministries, departments, and agencies to continue to do all of the other things that they are or they had otherwise planned to execute. But if for some reason the revenues are not performing, you're not going to rely on unbridled borrowing just so that people can execute and leave us with a deficit bigger than the 7.4. Those are the president's instructions.
But some of the opponents say that this threat of cutting is all a blackmail to get Ghanaians to support the e-levy.
Why would we be interested in blackmail? We are pretty hopeful that the e-levy will pass when we get our numbers together in Parliament. We don't need to blackmail Ghanaians or blackmail anybody.
But if the e-levy had passed in December, would we have been in this situation now looking at cutting salary? And
the fiscal challenges are not necessarily because of e-levy alone. It's a whole conversation of the revenue basket. There are several revenue lines: VAT, import taxes, income taxes, the whole gamut of revenue measures, non-tax revenue handles that are all supposed to come in. It is the embodiment of all of that that you are looking at. And if you are getting into a situation and you examine and you're of the view that those revenue handles are not bringing in what you are looking to get so that you can meet the programmed expenses, then you have to consider possible cuts. Else, in the end, your deficit is going to shoot beyond the programmed 7.4. So it's not
so even
about
if you pass
e-levy,
we will still have to look at these cuts.
We will still have to ensure that we are getting 7.4 deficit, which means as the revenues come in, because already we've lost some months on, I think, e-levy already. As the revenues come in, you've got to examine expenditures that are up and possible to be cut so that you don't go more than 7.4%.
You are a member of Parliament. Has it been difficult for government to account to Parliament on the COVID spending?
Absolutely not. And the reason is that there are mechanisms for accounting to Parliament, already established between the Constitution and the Public Financial Management Act. Sometimes people cook up controversy and scandals when there is none. And it's because they very much understand the media game. And so where there are no issues, they cook it up because it will capture media attention and create a false impression in the minds of people that there's something wrong. And by the time we get to the end, there's actually nothing wrong. But they would have occupied 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks of public time, public news time, creating a false impression. So for example, COVID expenses. They are run by ministries, departments, and agencies. No ministry, department, and agency can dip his hand in a public kitty and take money. You have to go through budgeting processes. You have to get commencement certificates. You have to go through contracting processes. The monies would have to be made available to the Controller and Accountant General's department. It's not given to you. They are what we call the BTAs, the bank transfer advices, before warrants come in, and then they are paid to the various contractors who have been contracted to do all sorts of things for the Republic. When it is done, in fact, before it is done, there are internal audit processes in the various ministries, departments, and agencies that audit and determine whether there's something wrong or not. When it is done, there are also the external auditors who come in and audit. And when they audit and they find something wrong, they take it to the Public Accounts Committee. In fact, first they make a recommendation. If that recommendation is not cured, they take their view of what they are finding, which is their view. It's not final judgment. It's not sacrosanct. It's the Auditor General's view. Then goes to the Public Accounts Committee. The Public Accounts Committee will call whichever ministry, department, or agency, and will call the Auditor General and his staff and will say, this is what the Auditor General has said about your place. What is your response? And we'll give him an opportunity to respond. We say, this is what the Auditor General said. It's true. We have corrected it. This is what the Auditor General said. It's not true. In fact, in my case, in my ministry's case, the Information Services Department was flagged for having spent 1.3 million Ghana cedis. I think this is 2017, 2018, thereabout, without corresponding vouchers. That's what the flagging was. And the Information Services Department then asked the Auditor General that please give me the particular bank debits that amount to this amount of money so that I can find out who debited the money and then track and see if it is true or not. It was not done. When we appeared before the Public Accounts Committee, I raised it before the chairman. That Mr. Chairman, we are yet to get that information. The chairman instructed the Auditor General's department that please furnish the ministry with that information so that they can get the Information Services Department to provide it. In fact, today I was having a chat with the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. He asked me, have they come? I said, no, they are yet to come and bring that. So all of these processes happen, and if you are still not satisfied with them, you can ask for an inquiry. You have a minority that says that we won't wait for any of these processes to go through. We won't let, or we won't wait for the Auditor General to work. We want to launch an inquiry into it. And if you don't take care,
but does Parliament not have power to do that? If it's urgent, doesn't Parliament have power to do that? The fact that Parliament has
power does not mean it has been necessitated. Else that would be abuse of Parliament's power. There's nothing that has necessitated that. The processes are ongoing. If the Auditor General comes and he tells you that he has not had access to audit, then you have reasonable grounds to say, then I want Parliament to go above what the Auditor General will ordinarily do. If you are not satisfied with what the Auditor General has done, you have reasonable grounds to go. You don't wait for the Auditor General to do his work. You come in and say you want to set up a bipartisan committee to look at this. And Joe Wiles was in the chair, the Honorable Deputy Speaker, who said, the committee you are asking for is the Public Accounts Committee. And all of these things you are talking about will show up before the Public Accounts Committee. So
but
where
maybe
are we
they
going?
wanted an ad hoc committee. They don't want a select committee.
But what is the difference? It's still going to be the same members
because
of Parliament.
It's a national crisis.
Which crisis? COVID expenditure is a national crisis.
COVID expenditure that we can't
There's
find.
no crisis. Who says we can't find it? The Auditor General has not told you he can't find it. He's doing his work. And when he is done, he will bring his view of the work to Parliament. I'm saying that if you don't take care, you will get caught up in this cacophony of allegations and other things. And the real thing that we're supposed to focus on, the rules that have been laid down in the Constitution, the Public Financial Management Act, if you don't take care, they won't let you focus on it and even apply them. Everybody will come up with something for you to get, moved along on.